Jen Wilson, your host, and as usual, we have Lauren
I know, my name is really hard to say.
It's a tongue twister. It's a tongue twister. Today it got me. Matthew is with us. She's going to talk some astrology, and I just want to wish all of us a happy Saturnalia here on the Weekly Woo Woo. So as we do every week, let's talk some woo woo. Saturnalia is actually considered one of the first Christmases that occurred in ancient Rome around 217. And as usual, it was a pagan holiday that was co-opted by Christianity, which is a very similar thing that's happened with Halloween, it happened with Easter, it happens with a lot of them. So we're going to dive kind of a little deeper into that this week and talk about how Christmas is actually, again, a pagan holiday that has been a little bit co-opted by Christianity to bring in all those heathens on board. So yes, as we just mentioned, Happy Saturnalia, that is a pagan holiday. It also was another one that was, to bring in the pagans, they took over their Yule. It's called Yule. There was a Yule log, Yule trees, they would decorate them. They would bring pieces of the forest into their house during the long winter months after the harvest, and they would celebrate that. They're also, which I found very interesting, a thing about a little bit of depression. So they use that as kind of a festive time to kind of keep people from being really depressed during the darkest time of the year, which is the winter solstice, which Lauren is going to dive actually deeper into that as well as we move forward. But then we start moving into kind of the Santa Claus ideas and how you actually have the spirit of Yule, which is kind of an older gentleman, and the Santa Claus, and he would leave little pieces in the stockings for the kids. You also have Saint Nicholas, which is a actual Christian saint, which is how we again get Christianity onto this in this story. He was a saint out of Greece that would go around and giving the young kids that were running around the street, they would help them out a little bit. And so that's where we kind of got the old friendly man giving away gifts during this time. We also, as Lauren has mentioned, there is a shamanistic element to this the Santa Claus and gift giving and all of this as well.
There is. Coming out of Russia and Siberia, there are tales of shamans who would traditionally dress in red suits with white fur all around them. Obviously, it's a cold climate. They need it all to keep them warm. And what they would do is they would go out into the forest and they would find special mushrooms. Yes, I do mean those type of special mushrooms that only grew at the base of pine and fir trees. And they would... It was very important the shamans did this because obviously if you get the wrong mushrooms, you die. So they would go out and they would collect these mushrooms, and then on the winter solstice, they would leave them for people inside of their houses on fir trees because they dried the shrooms themselves on the tree branches overnight.
Oh, wow.
And we also have the origins of the chimney story showing up here because often people's homes would be so snowed in that there was no way to get through the door.
No.
You had to just come through the smokestack chimney.
Drop that mushroom right through the chimney. So we're pretty much pulling from almost every culture for this Christmas mythology of Santa Claus and gift giving, which I think is fascinating. We don't really get to the big night before Christmas story until the big poem came out in the 1800s with 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, where we actually named the reindeer. That was the first time the reindeer actually had names. So I think that's very fascinating considering it's such a staple these days. And then one of the most interesting things that I read about all of this and how we've kind of all been co-opted is the ads that have come out. I actually was reading that Coca-Cola, the ad in 1933 is how we actually got the Santa Claus with the big white beard and the red and white suit and all of that. That's one of the ways how it really stuck with that big marketing push is from a Coca-Cola ad, which is why he is considered the icon of the holiday now, is from that ad. And it actually matched the Coke can, which is why those are the colors.
I completely believe that. And have you heard the Coca-Cola polar bears from that same, their series of ads are now going to have their own movie?
Of course they are. Of course they are. Everyone gets their own movie eventually. One day soon, Lauren, you and I will get our own movie.
Only if we're as cute as fuzzy polar bears.
Maybe. All right. Well, so that's kind of just a really brief background of what's going on for this holiday. It's always a very fun time to be with friends and family, and we always really enjoy that. There's always sometimes a little bit of tension or some really great times. So Lauren's actually now going to talk to us about what is going to be going on in the universe, a little bit of woo-woo in the astrology area for the holiday.
We do have woo-woo in the astrology area for the holiday, so we're getting really close now. The buildup of this week, today's a pretty easy day. We're going to see some more changes going on in the universe. On Christmas Eve itself, Mercury goes into Capricorn, where it will be joining Venus, Pluto, and of course the Sun, which will go into Capricorn on the 21st, winter solstice. So we're going to have a lot of Capricorn energy for this holiday. As Mercury goes into a feminine sign, we're going to see thought patterns and processes taking on kind of more serious tones. People are going to be practical and practically concerned. And we're going to see that move up on New Year's Day to a point where all of these planets conjunct each other at 10 Capricorn. So we're going to have Mercury, the Sun, and Pluto all sitting in the same spot. These are going to be major, strong, transformative periods. But before we get to New Year's, going back to Christmas itself, if you guys remember on Thanksgiving, I talked about a Moon and Mars conjunction. Well, that happens once a month as the Moon makes its cycle around the whole zodiac wheel. And it's going to happen again on Christmas. So whatever went on at Thanksgiving, kind of expect a similar feeling and vibe from this Christmas. It really is going to be a strong and powerful period to allow your emotions to come out, to maybe talk about some things that you haven't. And we're going to see echoes of this not only on this day but in the coming future, because we're starting to see a cardinal grand cross form. And the cardinal grand cross is a series of energies that all want to begin. They want to start something new, but they want to do it in different ways. There's a conflict between them about the exact right motivations and methods about going about these new beginnings. So all of this energy feels like it's really pushing. It can be difficult.
Now, what signs are the cardinal signs?
Okay, the cardinal signs, that's a great question, are Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. So we've got Mars in Libra, Uranus in Aries, Jupiter in Cancer, and of course Pluto in Capricorn, and Venus and the Sun in Mercury. So we have a lot of energies that are directly tied into this Grand Cross.
And if I have anything like that in my chart, is that going to affect me a little bit more?
If you have any of those planets in your chart, it's definitely going to affect you. I mean, in general, with something this powerful, the whole world is feeling it, but if you have personal planets in those areas, then this is a huge period for you that can be used really positively. What you need to do is not let yourself get overwhelmed by the pulls of all these powerful energies. Instead, really focus on what you want for the next year. Really, you know, New Year's, the spirit of starting something new, allow yourself to take that in, and I would say write stuff down. If you really have any goals, anything you want to do, write it down on a piece of paper, put it into the physical world. Capricorn energy is all about physically manifesting, and one of the first ways that we physically manifest is through writing. I mean, literally, you're putting a thought into the physical world. So write it down, because these energies are hard. They're going to push at you. There's going to be times where you feel like giving up. Use this, carry it around, let it remind you that you can get through this. You can use these energies.
Now, when I go to write stuff down, I get really wrapped up in the actual art of it. And if I don't have a really good pen and a really good piece of paper, I tend to not write it down. Does it matter what I write it on?
You're such a good Virgo. No, it absolutely doesn't. Write it on the back of a receipt, like in crayon.
Okay,
whatever it
perfect.
is, just keep it.
I get a little pressure that I don't have a good pen and paper.
I understand.
Okay. All right, so what's next?
Okay. So what's next? Well, we can go back to the New Year's Eve talk a little bit. You know, because we're going to see this huge conjunction of these planets all in that one spot, we're probably going to see something happening on the world scale on this day that's really going to bring home for us the push to change and the initiative for change. With so many planets in Capricorn, we're going to continue to have more and more subjects talked about, more things come out. Anything to do with plagiarism and dishonest behavior is going to get revealed. And likewise, things to do with really good human behavior, the amazing and beautiful things that people are doing in the world, those are going to get a huge push of recognition as well. Yes. Energies like this are really about stark contrast and illustrating the stark contrasts that are going on in the world.
Okay, I have one quick question, because I keep hearing this from a lot of people. Mars is going into Libra for like a gajillion years,
yes,
which is really not the truth. But for Mars, it's a huge transit in one in one sign. So what is that going to mean?
It is. So Mars is going to be in Libra for about 7 months. It's going to be retrograding, and that's why it's going to stay in Libra for so long. Mars only retrogrades once about every 2 years. So with it retrograding in Libra in particular, because once again, Libra is a cardinal sign, so it's going to tie into this T-square, it's going to get closer to the T-square, which is what it's doing right now. Then it's going to move away. So we're going to, or excuse me, the cardinal grand cross. So the cardinal grand cross is going to be felt less as Mars moves away, but then when Mars goes retrograde and it moves back, we're going to feel that cardinal grand cross again. So with Mars in Libra, a lot of the masculine energy that we all have, our soul drive, our focus, the thing that just makes us want to get up and go, all of that is going to be focused on very Venusian areas of life: diplomacy, working together, one-on-one relationships. Whatever you do right now, any projects you have, you'll strongly benefit from having a partner be involved, even if there's some issues that need to be worked out, some contentions. Compromise is going to be on the table, both on a personal scale and on the national scale throughout this entire 7-month period.
Interesting. So, as a Virgo who happens to have Venus in Libra with Mars in Libra, is that gonna be an issue for me?
Well, you're definitely going to be getting a lot more attractive to a lot of people. Whenever Mars meets up with Venus, it definitely pushes a sexual and sensual drive into the atmosphere. So you can expect a pretty busy social life.
I love it. Fantastic. And so, speaking of social lives, we already just touched on New Year's Eve, but is there any tips that you can give anybody to make sure that their New Year's Eve goes well? Last time you told us not to drive when we had a big festive thing going on.
Yeah, I would say, well, once again, you know, Pluto and Uranus are pretty powerful energies, and they're still locked in their square. And luckily right now we've got Saturn making a nice trine to Jupiter, and Saturn can be pretty forgiving when he makes that contact to Jupiter, but I would definitely say the same thing. I mean, just don't act like an idiot. Pluto and Uranus, when they get together, if you give them a reason to punish you, they will punish you.
Don't act like an idiot kind of covers almost every day.
I mean, it really does.
So thank you. So that's just kind of what we've got coming up for the next couple of weeks because this is our last show for 2013. And before we move on and talk about what's going on in the world for Woo in the World, can you tell us a little bit about the actual stars that occurred during Christmas and that whole, you know, the three wise men and the Star of Bethlehem? I've always been very fascinated about the actual astronomy aspects of that. So can you touch on that for a little bit?
Yeah, those are a great thing to talk about. So the three stars that are mentioned are called the three kings sometimes, but they're more commonly known as Orion's belt. And so on Christmas Day itself, what happens is that Orion's belt lines up with Sirius. This is actually constant. They're always aligned with Sirius, but on Christmas Day, they point to the exact location that the sun is going to come over the horizon of the Earth. And so it looks like the three kings and the star Sirius, also known as the Star of the East, are pointing to the location of the sun's birth. Does that sound familiar?
Sounds a little familiar, yes.
Yes.
So yes, absolutely.
So story of Christianity, I mean, this is a good time to kind of jump into some of the origins of Christmas astrologically. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that multiple different cultures all over the ancient world have had very similar stories in which there are miraculous saviors born that are associated with the sun, that go around performing miracles, that have kings that point to their birth, that are led by a star in the east. A lot of times there are even similarities between ideas of virgin births and a disciple betraying this person, becoming a teacher at the age of 30. 30, of course, is a very significant time astrologically because it's when your Saturn return occurs, and Saturn is the teacher. This is astrologically considered the age of adulthood. So it's not a surprise that you see both 30 and the number 12 often come up in the Bible.
Interesting.
12, of course, there's 12 signs, there's 12 houses. 12 is a very big number in the zodiac. And
12 disciples.
Yeah. Exactly. We've got the 12 disciples. If you want to Google it, I guarantee you will find so many lists of people matching each one of the disciples of Jesus to a specific astrological sign. So people are really, I mean, I know this is a controversial subject, but it's also really fun to talk about because there is so much astrological and astronomical evidence that points to the fact that really the Jesus story and most stories are metaphorical tellings of basically just what's going on in the sky. I mean, if you even look at the cross itself, most people don't know this, but you look at the astrological wheel and obviously it makes a cross in the center. So the circle around the cross and just the cross itself without the whole rest of the zodiac wheel, was a shorthand pagan symbol for the zodiac wheel itself.
And isn't it also Earth? It's also the Earth symbol, correct?
Earth is in the center.
Yeah,
exactly.
So that's fascinating. So there we go. I've always been fascinated about the actual astrology of the actual holiday because they even say that Jesus probably was born sometime in late September, early October. I've even read that as like fact. So it's not, I mean, while controversial, it is also, they're biologically saying that that's probably what it was and that they used the dates of the pagan, they kind of hijacked the pagan ideas and overlaid it. So
yeah.
It's unbelievably fascinating.
And it really helps that it goes along astronomically with the sun being in the position that it is on December 25th. What happens on the winter solstice is that the sun appears to be the furthest that it ever is from the Earth from the perspective of the northern hemisphere. So it appears to die or rest or stop moving for a 3-day period after the winter solstice. But then as the Earth starts to move ever so slightly closer to the sun from the perspective of the northern hemisphere, the sun appears to get closer or to rise again, to grow up again.
Interesting. It fascinates me. That's why I love astrology. I find astrology so fascinating. So let's just take it a step further and talk about something that's current. Let's talk some woo-woo in the world. First and foremost, GMOs were banned in Hawaii. Go Hawaii. Like, what is that all about? Why? This is becoming such a huge movement that I don't know about about your Facebook page, but my Facebook page is exploding with all the stuff about how awful GMOs are and what's happening. And it's so exciting to see Hawaii actually go ahead and be like, nope, no more. So
yeah.
what's going on
there? Well,
there?
this is huge. I mean, for Hawaii, for one thing, the main island of Hawaii, most of the farmland on the island was owned by Monsanto, which is one of the largest.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's one of the largest corporations that produces GMO foods. So for them to actually ban the growing of any foods on the island is a really huge move. It's a great victory for this movement. And in keeping, not long afterward, Connecticut became the first state to pass into law the labeling of all GMO foods or foods that have GMO ingredients in them. So this is really exciting. And this is an example, I think, astrologically, we can really see Venus and Jupiter and the opposition that they've been in, as well, of course, as Pluto opposing Jupiter, being a huge influence here. Cancer is the sign of food and motherhood and nurturing and all of our really base needs and instincts. And with Jupiter there, it seeks to illuminate, to light up, to provide justice, to expand people's views on these issues. And food, obviously, is a very big issue. You can see why it's associated with cancer.
It's kind of one of the biggest issues,
yeah,
really.
I mean, you know, we can't really live without it.
Exactly. So let's just take it. I'm going to guess that you're probably going to talk a little Pluto with this next one because I am learning a little bit on our talks, which is fascinating. But I am so excited. We just announced today that New Mexico is going to be the 17th state to allow gay marriage. And the same day, we find out that President Obama is sending delegates to the Sochi Olympics, and based on the fact that there's this whole uprising about the persecution of homosexuals and whatnot in Russia, he's sending Billie Jean King, Brian Boitano, and another lesbian woman from the hockey team, but he's not sending political delegates. The president isn't going, and he's the third. There is the French president isn't going, the German president isn't going, and now President Obama is not going, nor is he sending the vice president or anyone else. So I'm really fascinated by this, but I'm guessing there's a little Pluto action going on there.
There's definitely some Pluto action going on. I mean, Pluto and Uranus, once again, this isn't something that just started. This is a cycle that technically began back in the late 1960s. And so just like in that era, we saw huge movements in civil rights and the change in social structures and what was considered acceptable or not acceptable socially, we're seeing that come up again now, and we're seeing very similar changes occur. So I would say that everything that's been going on with homosexuality, both its legalization in a number of states in terms of marriage, and President Obama's, the German presidents, these various different international leaders' support of it through their actions, we're seeing that this is a social issue of our times, that it's going to move forward. The world is changing in the sense, Pluto, transformation, change, where it's no longer considered acceptable within the structure of the world to hold on to limiting, bigoted, ideological objections to other people's private lives.
Which is really, I think it's a great way to move into the new year, and I'm very, very excited for all of that. And as a final one, you cannot end the year without a really good feel-good story. And this one is, I apologize, I do not know which country this is from. What
Brazil.
Country? Brazil, out of Brazil. A young boy found a dog on the street. He was hit by a car, and the guy who hit him drove off, and this little boy dodged traffic to save this dog. And, you know, come on. Boy saves dog. How else can you end the year? It's a perfect story.
It is. It's a really sweet story. And it's an excellent example of the planets manifesting in one person. You know, children are so much more vulnerable. Makes it sound like it's a bad thing, but it's really not. But they are, in a sense, more vulnerable. They're more open to the energies of the sky, to the energies that are currently going on in the universe. They don't have the pressure and the years of societal conditioning that's been put on them yet. And so on the day that this happened, Venus and Jupiter were actually in an exact opposition. And Venus and Jupiter, when they get together, are very compassionate. Jupiter is all about justice and generosity and caring and doing what's right. And Venus is all about love and personal values and together, when they get together, they really are concerned with putting those personal values into the world. And so with this little boy, this is a great example of how he saw something that was bad and he just did something about it. You know, instead of being scared, instead of worrying about what the rules were, he just took what his own sense of justice was, which was to save this dog, and he did it. And I think that that's really beautiful, and the world needs more people like him.
Absolutely. And I think that is just the perfect way to end 2013 here at your Weekly Woo Woo. We look forward to seeing you in 2014. Have a fantastic holiday, however you celebrate it. Enjoy the new year. Lauren, thank you so much for everything and all of your amazing insights. I've had such a good time talking with you, and I look forward to seeing you in 2014.
I look forward to seeing you too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. For more Weekly Woo Woo, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on EmpowerMe.tv.